It's 26 minutes after 7. We're talking about a subject that I've been very passionate about for a while now. Mr. Joseph Sapon is Executive Director of the National Media Commission. He joins us for a conversation. Remember sometime last week there was a story about a gentleman threatening the new American ambassador to Ghana on social media, on Facebook to be specific. That person has been taken to court. The issue is in court. He's on bail. And a lot of people were surprised. Can you be called to order for something that you say on Facebook? Is anybody watching what you do on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, or any of the social media sites? We'll also touch on this content law, which GIBA, the Independent Broadcasters Association, is taking the NMC on for some aspects that they do not agree with, particularly the punishments. But Mr. Judge Sapon will tell us where we are with that. Are we working with the law today? If you check from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even today, you'd realize that there's some kind of drama. People give it because it's filler, it's gossip. We have a member of parliament and a radio presenter battling it all out there. Where's the NMC really? And what can they do? Mr. Sapon, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity.
You have a very detailed law. GIBA has dragged you to courts. They want some interpretation on a few of the things in the law. But even without the law, you are a regulator. Things have been happening. Where have you been?
Two quick jokes. First, I like your use of language, dragged. You can see that we are unwilling participants in that court process. But because our friends say we should meet there, we will be there. And when I say friends, we mean it, because GIBA, apart from their membership of the commission, is such an important element of our work. For a regulator, the industry is very important to you. We have a responsibility as much as regulators to facilitate the growth of the industry. So that's just about that. Then you say, even without the law, unfortunately, regulation is about law. One can only do what the law allows you to do. And we need that because, particularly within the communications sphere, the right to free expression is such a fundamental right, and it has such major political and governance implication that you do not want a regulator that goes on a frolic of its own, doing whatever it likes. You want the regulator to work within laws. And that is why the law is very critical for our work.
Social media.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about social media? A lot of things happen on social media.
Yes. Everybody should be concerned. But I think that we need to use the term concern very loosely. Yes, we are concerned in a very positive way that it offers a facilitating opportunity for people to express ideas, share information, provide entertainment for themselves. Even if for nothing at all, escalate our personal little gossips to a bigger platform that we can share. But we are also concerned, like every communications environment, about the potential for abuse. And we would want to discourage any kind of abuse of such a fantastic creation of this generation.
But how do you monitor social media as NMC?
We have been monitoring social media only to do three things. First, to test their capacity to do that. Two, to just have a general sense of what goes on. And three, as a measure in this political economy, as a measure, or in terms of its possible impact on traditional media. One, it is driving advertising in a lot of ways. It can take advertising away from traditional media and therefore take away sustenance, and further therefore also affect the capacity for survival of traditional media. We need to study that. We are also interested in how much of content emanates from social media and end up within a traditional media, and what kind of gatekeeping systems traditional media use in picking material from social media. So essentially, this is what we've been doing.
Do you realize in recent times that there are some spoof sites, sites that are not real? They are supposed to be satirical websites, but unfortunately, even traditional media will pick stories from these sites and put on their main platforms.
I have said this publicly, and I would want to repeat. Social media is a very fantastic environment. If you limited yourself to Ghana, I say you can get, that's the place you can find an Isankoma. But that is also the place that you can find my kind of Choba Toka. You understand? And within that continuum, you, the individual, you have to make a big choice. In other words, there's a lot of good material there, but there is also a lot of horizontal material. So the individual who consumes social media or uses it needs to have the necessary literacy to be able to decide. For us in media, it appears to me that there is a certain obligation. One, to educate our own selves. Two, to develop the necessary gatekeeping processes that enable us to test the materials we pick. But above all, whatever the source, the basic principle in journalism of checking and rechecking applies everywhere, regardless of where you meet the material. So if you decide to pick material from social media, what is left is for you to do independent verification. The fact that it's on social media does not absolve you of the responsibility to do independent verification of the material.
But where people are not doing that, where's the NMC?
NMC is here. I think, maybe we need to think of...
Not to cut you, there was a recent story about a certain country, where Eritrea, where it was said that they had more women, fewer men. It became like a joke on social media, men wanting to travel to Eritrea. But some people thought it was a serious story. This started from Kenya, and then it spread through the whole of Africa. And in Ghana, we had some of our own people put the content out there on radio, and it sounded, because they believed the story, that Eritrea was forcing their men to marry more than one, and that if you refused, you're going to be prosecuted. That's why I'm saying that, where's NMC? Because we didn't hear you say anything about that, for instance.
Okay. Well, we need to look at this on a number of levels. First of all, NMC at all material times should restrain itself from jumping in too many times. The analogy of a regulator is like a referee in a football game. It's important that, or I don't know your favorite game actually.
Oh, I love football.
That is great. If the referee should be able to control the game by the rules. But if the referee is too much into the game, he obstructs the game. You understand? Every hit of the ball hits the referee. Every attempt at creative movement attracts a whistle. The game is down. You understand? And that is the dilemma of a regulator. At all material times, the media regulator should be able to restrain itself and only do two things. First, capacitate the media to be able to operate on their own within the law. So you need to have a very strong legal framework within which everybody should operate. We set the framework, and then everybody understands where the lines are. Once the framework is developed, everybody should be free to operate within that framework. There are two things. If you find any content, always be very clear in your mind between content that is irritating and content that is dangerous. The regulator shouldn't worry itself with too many times intervention when the content is just about what is irritating. There are so many situations where further communication can correct. Some American jurists have said that the remedy for bad speech is more speech. There are many situations where clarification offered to the public can settle the issues. In those moments, those who are involved in the matter should be made to offer clarification. The regulator should not go in attempting to sanction and at every point seeking to stop the flow of the game.
But your new law seeks to do that, because if we could regulate ourselves, then you wouldn't, come out with a backing as strong as you have.
I just spoke about having a very objective framework within which all of us understand, and therefore all of us can play according to the rules. That is all that the new law says. So that if it's in a football game, there's a general sense of what an offside rule means. There will be one or two situations where we disagree, but we know when a goal is scored, we know when a penalty, you understand, we know what's a foul. By that, the generality of the game will be played according to the rules. There will be just a few situations where perhaps the referee, in this case the regulator, may have to intervene. So all that this law does is to set the general framework. And that is why I keep explaining that this law itself does not even apply itself to media practitioners. It only enjoins
we're working on their behalf.
Yes, but that is precisely the point. On their behalf is the point. So those for whom you work must have the responsibility for ensuring that the work goes on well. They may decide that they will hire people like you, well-trained, decent, and pay them well, so that the work is done well. Or they may want to spend their money elsewhere that secures the same objective. But the commission leaves that to them, or the law leaves that to them, as part of their right to operate freely within the polity.
But this law is electronic communications.
Yes.
It's not only radio and television.
Yes.
What does that entail?
It only means that everybody carrying content within the electronic communications space must abide by these basic rules of decency. And you just mentioned social media. Within the past couple of years, more and more innovations have moved into the major networks. If you look at Ghana now, there are telecom companies that are operating radio on demand, video on demand services. This is content that they themselves are putting out. They are not acting as common carriers where you can use the network to carry content across. These are content that they themselves have put there to drive traffic. Okay. All that it means is that that kind of content must also respond to certain basic minimum standards. Otherwise, you are going to have a symmetry of regulation where those in traditional media cannot do certain kinds of things because it is not good for society. But that can happen within the networks. Take, for example, your television at home. It will be very difficult for any child to access pornography directly, even if that there was a service on television that offered that. But most children have access to their telephone, and the telephone is so private to them. So if there's pornographic content on a service,
which I hear there is.
I mean, I could demonstrate that to you just now, even though it will be for your eyes and not for the camera. It's all over. So as more and more innovations move into the networks, it becomes necessary that we set certain basic minimum standards that all of us must meet. I do not think that it helps to stop the innovations that are happening. It's good. Broadcasters have not raised it, but I can easily see that within the next couple of years, they are going to see the competition coming more from the networks. Across Europe, America, and some part of Asia, the question about OTT, over-the-top services, has become the biggest discussion point. And people are talking about market disruption as a result of the growth in OTTs. I think that we are going to have that kind of debate here very soon. I wish that we will even start now and put in place the necessary measures that enables innovation to go on without disrupting the market. So these are the reasons why we came up with the electronic communications content standards, just to say these are basic minimum standards that all of us must meet for purposes of our public morality, for purposes of our collective decency, and for the purposes of our collective security.
How are you going to monitor a telco which has a service that you have to subscribe to have access to?
First of all, the regulatory approach should learn to restrain itself, as I have already said, from taking decisions or actions that intervenes too much in the market. The regulator, in my view, should concentrate on setting the broad framework and parameters. If you all agree on those parameters, then you may want to, once or twice, the infractions that occur or where you have clear indications of potential breaches, address them. We should, within the shortest possible time, try to limit ourselves as much as we can from seeking to do too much monitoring.
So what does it mean? If a telco has a certain service, if it's pornographic or it's got some explicit sexual content in there, but it says you can dial star something something hash to have access to it, you're not interested in, I mean, once you believe that once there's a law, they've gone around it, so they're doing the right thing, is that it?
No, that's not what we are saying. What we are saying is that you will look at the material, and if you come to the objective conclusion that this material is pornographic, then you want them to take measures to ensure that children or minors do not have access to this.
But the fact that you have to subscribe before you have access, that's a measure, isn't it?
That cannot be.
So, but how else do you do it?
Because the subscription may well only be a commercial point that enables them to sell the service. But if you are going to do that, then there would be a requirement, and the regulator, in my view, should not be prescriptive. Precisely because of the right to free expression, the methods that you adopt must also respond to the constitutional demands for those rights. So you would want to leave that to the operator to satisfy you, the regulator, that they have instituted measures that make this material inaccessible to children. So the onus is on them to come up with a system that makes sure that these materials are inaccessible to children. If they are unable to do that, then they will have to wait until such a time as they are able to offer protection to minors in order to sell. So it's a two-way thing.
So as it is now, do you see that they have ways of protecting minors?
I'm not persuaded by that. But because there was no legal framework to address that, one needed to be very careful about how to do it, because, I mean, really, what is the basis upon which you seek to engage anybody? But now that there is a law, it seems to me that it offers a good opportunity to engage the industry and to say, these are the minimum standards that all of us have to meet. How do we work together to ensure that children and other vulnerable groups are protected?
Do all the players know about this law?
The presumption of law is that once a law is passed, it's noticed to the world. And so when you hear people say that ignorance of the law is no excuse, that is the presupposition that a law, when it is passed, is noticed to the whole world. So at the formal level...
But you also have a responsibility of letting everybody know that there's a law.
And I completely agree with you. If you would recall, as soon as the law came into force, we started this very interesting national seminar on the right to free expression and what constitutes reasonable limitations on them. That is presently before the court. And so one has had to be cautious and also devote a bit of time in dealing with the concerns that they are coming at whatever level that they are addressing them, including the court. So we still have a bit of time. We will get this done with and deepen our engagement with everybody else to make sure that...
Is this law in full force today?
It is. Until anything happens, which you do not expect, it's a law in force.
But per the law, you have to do registration of contents and things like that. I'm not sure
everybody... It's not the content that we are registering. It is the entities that are producing and distributing content that we are registering.
Okay, but have you done that?
And that's precisely the point that I'm making, that immediately the law came into force, we had all these interesting issues come up. For a regulator, it is important that you work for the people, and that you are not seen as bulldozing your way even in the face of concerns, whether they are legitimate or not. You understand? So we have adopted a very cautious approach. Fortunately, this is a law that seeks to create better, decent communications environment for ourselves into the future. And so if we can afford not to do anything that undermines our capacity for long-term search for decency, we will do that. And that means that at this point, we need to act with caution. And that when we are able to, when we have finished sorting out these little issues about the court processes, we will get back.
So duly this is on hold?
It is not on hold, but the implementation process is taking into account the concerns that have been expressed and the forum that we have been invited to, dragged to by our friends.
So you want to finish that court process before you concentrate on the implementation
We
of this?
think that it's only fair. We think that it's only fair.
So,
but the law is enforced.
Sure. Okay. Isn't that a bit confusing? The law is in force, but because of the court processes...
No. Maybe it's when you have your money in the bank and you are not spending, it's still your money lying in the bank.
Yeah, but that's my personal choice of not spending it.
So that's precisely...
Does it mean that, okay, today you're not enforcing, but tomorrow you could decide to?
That would be erratic, and the regulatory agency shouldn't act like that, and a public agency as well. We work for the public, not for ourselves. And so it is important that the public is put on notice about whatever we do. So if we are going to scale up full implementation of the law, it would only be fair that we re-announce that to the public and to the industry players to say, these parts of the law we are getting back to, and that from this date we are doing ABCD. Okay. And so everybody should be
So that's
notice.
My cue. We wait for a formal announcement that says we're enforcing this.
We are
let me just use this classic example of the 17.5 VAT on some banking services. When we all made a lot of noise and people didn't know about it, there was a formal communication of a suspension. And then after a while, they came back and said, now we're in full force, we're going all out with it. So we were all very clear in our minds. Just like the 1% on investments, which has been
You live in the money environment. So
please, let us be clear in our minds. What is the way forward?
Okay. I think you are right, except that in the two scenarios that you cite, they are essentially quantitative environments that you can count. From day one, they've taken 1 CD from my account. Or day two, they took 3 CDs from my account. And so you can do that. Social qualitative environments don't operate like that. But I take a hint from you that as at now, precisely because there is a court case and all of us are slowing down. But secondly also, if you look at the law itself, it had offered a transitional period within which, for example, the registration and authorization of electronic communication services should start. As we sit, we would not reject any application solely on the basis that there is some process going on. But we are not going to go at institutions because they have not done it. First, because the transition period that the law set is not up. And two, because we also need, as a public agency, to show our respect to the court, that we are aware that our friends from Giba had come to them seeking some interpretation of exactly what the law means. And therefore, it is only fair that out of respect to the court and also in good faith in dealing with Giba and all our partners, we are ready to listen to everybody as we move along.
All right. Where are we with the process, though? Do you have a date when you're appearing in courts?
No, not yet. We've not gotten there.
Do you have the power to monitor as NMC?
Sure.
You have a beautiful law. Those who disagree with aspect of it, fair. But what's your monitoring power?
Yes. For now, we have state-of-the-art monitoring facility. And in addition to the state-of-the-art monitoring facility that we have in Accra, we have a secondary system which is in Kumasi. Not as good as what is in Accra, but certainly a very good monitoring system. In addition to that, we are acquiring monitoring. Now the European Union provided the monitoring equipment which is in Accra and also in Kumasi. They have also provided us with a mobile monitoring system that is able to travel around the country. Fortunately for us, as part of our budget process, we also obtained from government another opportunity for mobile equipment. And if you would just give me a small permission, I think that the Director of Budget and the Chief Director at the Ministry of Finance deserve some commendation for this support, because it was their personal instrumentation that made this possible for us.
Have you received, and this is what I asked, have you received the money? The budgeting can be there, but the actual release of the money.
This one, they have done it.
Okay.
We have actually procured the system. The system is on high seas. I'm told that the ship arrives either today or tomorrow. So I will invite you, all things being equal, I'm sure that we can invite you with your cameras to see monitoring facilities.
And you have the men to do the monitoring.
So that is the next step. We have a well-trained set of young people. Unfortunately, most of them are national service, and therefore we have had to train and retrain every year. We have made proposals to the Public Services Commission to enable us expand our human resource capacity. That is what I think we've not said, is that NMC has been involved in a very quiet reform over the last couple of years.
Okay.
The tipping point of the reforms is where we are. Briefly, let me explain. Media regulation hinges on three key pillars: standards, monitoring, and enforcement. Standards require that you set all the rules, the code of ethics and all those things. Monitoring is what we are talking about, which is heavily technology. Enforcement is a question of law. We have finished with work on the standards, so we have broadcasting standards, we have print media standards, we have standards on local language broadcasting, we have standards on how the state-owned media should cover political parties fairly, and many others, political advertising, and many others. We have all of them. Then, with the support of the European Union, I say we have now the monitoring facilities that enable us to monitor. The last leg of the reforms is the enforcement. That is the law that we have worked on. So from this point on, we launch into proper media regulation. And that is why we are very excited about what has happened. It's been a very quiet, we tend to be a bit quiet, but it's been an extremely successful reforms that we can pride ourselves that within the public sector, we may well be the one institution that without money has succeeded in carrying out major reforms, and very quietly.
We wait to see. A lot of people say you can bite. So let's see how well you can bite.
And then all of a sudden they say we are biting too much because of the new law bites too much.
Well, some of us are still not moved because you can have this law and still not enforce.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I completely
so we'll wait to see. But I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very, very much for this opportunity.
All right.
It's always great to talk to you and refreshing.
Mr. George Sapon is Executive Director of the National Media Commission. I would say that watch what you say on social media, what you do there, because even if the NMC is not watching, the people that you're saying something against could take an action, just like the American Embassy has done right now. That's it for my banner. Stay with us. We've got Talk Roland Walker coming up next with his guests.